ahead and start going live. Well, hey folks, good Wednesday evening to you. I am your incognito, happy, humble host, Bill Sylvie, aka The Dungeon Delver. Coming to you live from an undisclosed, sequestered location where I'm currently hiding out. It seems a roving pack of 5th edition fans have heard about my criticisms and I'm just kidding. This is all a joke. Anyway, it's good to see you. We are back with Kyle because I now know how time works again. I can use a clock and everything, the big hand, the little hand, and the little skinny hand that counts down the seconds. I know how that works now.
The whole world should just use Greenwich Mean Time.
Metric time, 100 minutes past 15 o'clock. It may sound crazy, but there was actually a proposal to create metric time, and thank God we didn't. Look, rest of the world, let me tell you something. There's two kinds of societies.
The French did it.
There's two kinds of societies.
Briefly during the revolution.
God. And we look how that ended. Who wants to sign up to be the Robespierre on that one? But there's two kinds of societies in this world, boys and girls. The societies who put men on the moon and the societies who use the metric system. So
I've explained that to my wife. I sometimes still use the old imperial system.
Right on.
Which is very slightly different to the US standard system, but yeah.
Yes.
With the pounds and stone and everything, but yeah.
And it's interesting.
Like the scales, she finds the scales set to pounds and ounces and stuff. So a metric change. We changed to metric in Australia in 1967 or 1970, something like that. Mm-hmm. Just before I was born, but obviously the system kind of carries over for a while before, you don't just all change one day. Carries over for about 10 years, and as well, I was born and grew up in a rural area. So obviously they're a bit slower to change compared to the city that they want to do the latest new thing, including, changing the entire measurement system. So I grew up, and of course, cars and things like that were in miles, and petrol was sold in gallons and stuff. So, and milk was sold in gallons and quarts and pints and stuff.
Right.
So we got taught it in primary school. I think it was Asimov who said that he felt that that system was superior in that it made kids better at maths. Remember, there's 12 inches in a foot and 3 foot in a yard and 1,728 yards in a mile and all that.
Right. Well, and it's kind of an interesting corollary. It's like, people who were literally not born yet when 3rd edition was published. Get your head around that, Kyle. Get your head around that. By the way, can everyone hear Kyle? If you can hear, I hope you can hear Kyle. I haven't seen any comments saying we can't hear Kyle. Yeah. But if you're having trouble hearing Kyle, please say so. I don't want to sit here and do this for an hour and then people are like, you were talking to Marcel Marceau. Why is it? But kids who were not alive when 3rd edition was published, looking at AD&D and saying that's too hard. Why the charts and this needs to be negative and sometimes it's lower and so just make it all go one way. And I'm like, no, it's easy. My way is easy. Don't bring me your metric Dungeons and Dragons. But if that's what you grew up with, if that's what you grew up with, then so be it. And I do want to point out, though, that even metric is kind of arbitrary in its decision of lengths. We just measured the distance from here to here and then broke it down by 10. Well, Charlemagne measured the distance of his foot and broke it down by his big toe. So, so yes, please, if you're having trouble hearing Kyle, please chime in on Facebook, on YouTube. wherever, whenever. But yeah, no, it just comes down to what you grew up with. I watch a lot of. Speaking of numbers and you folks who still worship Queen, I got a bone to pick. I got a bone to pick.
You know what's on the wall of my gym here?
What's that?
I'm turning the camera around. Can you see? My gym.
It better be that politician you were telling me about. You need to have a picture of him hanging up.
There we go.
Oh goodness! There you go.
So, well, when I was a kid, she was on the walls of schools and businesses and all that sort of stuff. So I did that, and also it was a particular troll because it comes out every few years in the paper. It's pointed out that any business or community organisation can request an Australian flag and a portrait of the Queen to display at their business or their workplace or their community organisation or whatever. And that's from the old days where you'd have like the Scouts Association and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Would have a portrait on the wall, or the post office or whatever would have a portrait. And they want to encourage the display of the flag and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's kind of an obscure little legal thing that most people don't know about. But yeah, so then it'll occasionally pop up in the newspaper. Someone will point it out and pop it up, and so then they get lots of requests. So I make sure to do a request every couple of years, particularly because my local member is a Republican. She's against the monarchy. So I take particular pleasure in making her spend some of her...
Okay, for trolling purposes, I approve.
And also, the occasional gym member comes in and says, "Why do you have a portrait of the Queen on the wall?" And I say, "Why wouldn't I?" And it establishes my authority early on here in the gym.
you just verbally T-pose in front of them and establish your primacy. I love it.
Basically, yes. Basically, so.
I love it.
Why would I not?
Why would I not? That's the Ron Swanson answer. Just be a hostile witness at all times.
Yeah.
Are you implying I shouldn't have one? Well, I mean, it's just kind of strange. Why would you say that?
Yeah. So, yeah, it makes it good fun.
Good.
It makes it good. And I don't think it's bad to have traditions and history. Your own country is pretty rich in traditions and history by this stage. And of course, there's your regional traditions and history as well. So you don't need that. Australia is a bit of a younger country, and it's kind of a lower population in a similar area. So we don't have as quite rich traditions and history. There's the Aboriginal people, but they tended to be little isolated tribes. So they were quite separate from each other.
Right.
They weren't. They didn't have as common a culture as even, for example, the Maori of New Zealand and so on. So we can't really draw on those too much either. So we don't have a lot to draw on. So I don't think it's a bad idea to have a bit of history. The politics of it is another matter, but to have a bit of history and remember things, like we were discussing the other day online about military units having names and history. If you're in the 82nd Airborne or the Prince of Wales Light Horse Regiment, you know what that's about. It's got a history.
Exactly.
There were events, and it's got a history, and I think it could be good to be connected with them, like a family history and so on. And I think to take it back to gaming, I think this applies both within a role-playing game, that you have a bit of history to your game world, and which is not necessarily like pages and pages of backstory, but a bit of history to it. and as well a history to your own game group, so that your game group can say, "Do you remember when?" And we did. Oh my god! And then I rolled that, and then so there's that bit of history as well. That brings people together. And
Oh,
then, of course, there's the history as the game as a whole, and you know, it's why we prefer AD&D and so on to the more recent additions, because all this stuff, there's a lot of history to it. That's probably, I guess, our appeal too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was teasing someone, and this actually kind of goes back. We were talking about college football, which I think Kyle has somewhere around 0.0% interest in. But over on a Discord, somebody was asking about my handle, because I don't have time to go in and set up a million separate handles for all the Discord channels I'm in. Look, Bill Sylvie Dungeon Master. That's what you get. You get Grimorley, and it's Bill Sylvie Dungeon Master. And somebody was making the comment about, somebody made a D&D related comment and directed it at me. I didn't see it initially, but when I checked back in the channel, I saw my name had been mentioned. And in the interim between me seeing it and answering, somebody said, well, you got to remember, Bill is like an old school, old school D&D player. You might not get the answer you're looking for. And so they started making a lot of comments vis-a-vis, you know, 5th edition's better. There's no THAC 0. There's no, you know, blah, 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 you know, just making a lot of assumptions and so on. And I said, look, this is my Dungeons and Dragons. And I shared I shared a quick image of the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, the older one with the Efreet, not the slightly newer one with the Jeff Easley art, which is equally beautiful, by the way. I said, this is my AD&D, and then I shared a picture of that Wizards of the Coast D&D product that just came out, I guess, 6-7 months ago, that basically has all the characters going to like a middle school prom, and they're all like in fancy dress and dancing, and it looks very cartoony and so on the cover. And I shared that picture, and I said, this is your Dungeons and Dragons. So I will let the jury decide which is the better version of D&D. But that goes back to, you know, what I was saying. There's people who are not alive when 3rd edition came out. Not 3.5. When 3rd edition came out, these people were not yet born. They can vote, drink, and buy tobacco products in the United States now, which is horrifying. And their first D&D is going to be 5th edition. You know, I can't do anything about that. Kyle, entertain these nice people while I get the door. My dog's going berserk. Hang on a second. Slight emergency. Sorry.
So I hope everyone can hear me well, since I'm the only one speaking now. Hope you can all hear me well. So, yep, this is the later edition. I think it's fundamentally the same. People like to go into like the minute differences, like the difference between Classic Traveller 1977 and 81. I think those are pretty minor ones, really. We don't worry about that. Even I think it's. I do think though it's an odd comment that guy Bill was talking about said, where he said you might not get the answer that you're looking for. I think if you're looking for a particular answer, don't ask the question. You ask a question because you want to hear a different answer. I mean, if you're talking about the rules of some particular game or whatever, obviously you don't ask a 3.5 aficionado about the rules of edition 5. But aside from that sort of thing, you want the you don't want a particular answer. You don't want a particular answer. You want to ask questions of people who will give you the answer you don't want to hear, because then you'll learn something. That applies for us too.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about the delay there, the stepping aside. I was not expecting that that sudden visit there. Um,
Well, I was just saying to the guys that I found it interesting that comment that someone had made. Bill's old school, so you won't get the answer that you're looking for. And I was saying that apart from rules questions about particular editions or games or whatever, it is an odd concept that you'd say, look for somebody who's going to give you the answer that you're looking for. If you only want a particular answer, you don't need to ask the question. You could just tell yourself, and then it's done.
yeah,
You ask a question because you might get an answer that you don't like.
yeah. No, I mean that's absolutely true. I mean, good RPG advice is universal. I've
Hmm.
held little discussions on game days and at cons um, about good DMing practices. I mean, everybody has seen the videos I've done on how to D&D. Once you take a step back away from the mechanics, nothing there isn't completely applicable to whatever version of D&D or fantasy gaming or even potentially horror gaming or sci-fi gaming or Wild West gaming or modern warfare
Hmm.
gaming. It Good DMing advice is good DMing advice. I mean, you know, driving a Porsche 911, 911, and driving 911, a Porsche emergency number, driving a Porsche 911 and driving a 24-year-old Saturn SL1, you drive the same way on the roads. Hands at 10 and
Hmm.
2, don't tailgate, check your blind spots, accelerate smoothly into traffic on ramps when there's ample space, leave a cushion. It doesn't matter what you're driving, and it doesn't matter what edition you're playing. Don't don't be an overt dick to your players. Make sure everybody's going to have fun, and it goes back to your standard.
Yeah, I was thinking
Snacks.
about this the other day. So I was talking with a friend about the gym business and the and how, don't worry guys, this will come back to gaming about the gym business and uh, training people and so on. And it made me think of an old presentation that I saw. So there's this guy Paul Horn, who's a starting strength coach. Starting strength is a particular method of barbell training, and he's a starting strength coach. And he did a presentation on starting a starting strength gym. It would apply to starting any gym, and much of what he said would apply to starting a business as well. So he said things like, um, he said, "Don't ask for permission. Don't wait for permission to start your business." He said, "It's not like this." Ripito, who's sort of the, I hesitate to say Gygax, maybe the Arneson of the strength training world.
Hmm.
He's not going to come up and say, listen, guys, we decided we need a gym in Bumfuck, Idaho, and you're our guy. So you've got to go and do it. He's not going to. You're not going to be instructed to do it one day. You're not going to be given permission. You just go ahead and do it. And he said your friends and your family will undermine you. They'll doubt you because your mother doesn't want to see you fail. She doesn't want to see you disappointed and miserable and broke. So she'll tell you to do something nice and safe. Finish high school, go to university, do this degree, and then do a postgrad, and then go and get this job, and blah blah blah. She'll tell you to do something nice and safe because she doesn't want to see you crushed and disappointed. And your friends are in some god awful job that they hate, and they don't want to see you succeed because that would lead them to question why they're putting up with the god awful job that they hate. And so on. So he said a lot of things that would apply to many businesses and that. And it was interesting watching it all because as I watched it, so there was an audience of coaches in his room, and you could think of sort of coaches as the game masters of the gym, really.
Hmm.
They organize things, but people have a lot of autonomy themselves in how they do things. Anyway, so he was talking to coaches of varying levels of experience. So I had, because I told my friend about this, so I sent him the video later, and then I went back and I rewatched it. And it was made in 2015 or something like that. So I rewatched it after several years, and it occurred to me as I was watching it, you could probably get anyone who's experienced in an industry or a sport or whatever to make this like 30 to 60-minute presentation on that thing, their industry, their sport, their hobby, and that really boils down the guts of it to get the essentials of it all. And the audience watching, their reaction will depend on their experience. So just picking arbitrary numbers, something like 0 to 3 years experience, they'll go, oh yeah, I know that. And no, they don't. They don't really. And then 3 to 6 years experience, they'll say, yeah, I know that. And this time they actually do know that because they're experienced enough. 6+ years, they'll go, yeah, I know that. But that, oh shit, I forgot that. I have to keep doing that. I have to go back and I have to do that. So I think this is certainly true of the gym business. When I was watching that and he mentioned things, I thought, yes, I've forgotten that. And I need to go back and do that. And things will be better. But I think, as I said, you could also make a similar thing about gaming, about these gaming principles. And that's why we go back and we read the Dungeon Master's Guide and similar books like the Old Traveller ones and so on. And they tell us things. And the first years we were going, oh yeah, I know that. And no, we didn't. And then medium level of experience, oh yeah, I know that. And we actually did. And then years and years, I know that, but I forgot this and I've got to do that again. And then things will be better. So this really is something I keep thinking of, and it's why I even go back and watch some of our old videos, like the Hex on Up one and stuff, where we do the hex crawl and roll things up and that, to remind me of what it's all about and why we do this.
Yeah, I mean, it is never bad to go back and look at the fundamentals. I've never walked into a job where the competent guy, even if I was the supposed competent guy, was not always refreshing things that he or I, quote unquote, just know. I just no. You don't have to tell me that. I know how to do that. I mean, certainly there can be time savers. Look, I'm just going to assume you know how to format a boot disk, and we're gonna. Of course, nowadays, now again, going back to that crowd that was born in 2000 or 2001, if you were hiring them for an IT job and you had a legacy machine, you couldn't make the assumption that they know how to format a floppy. For floppies were on their way out all the way back in the early 2000s. I was still building machines with them, but I knew that wasn't long for this world. So, there's a time and a place for it, but I feel like you should never turn your nose up at revisiting old DMing concepts that you may have, quote unquote, and you could see the air quotes I'm doing now if I had a camera, things that I just know. I don't need to hear that. I just know what I'm doing. The one exception that I'll make is almost every role-playing game book anymore has, what is a role-playing game? Look, man, if I'm buying your book, I probably got it.
Yeah. I didn't put that in conflict because, like, if you find my obscure little game,
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the same's true. I think it's well established enough now that it doesn't need to be explained. It would be like buying a chess set and having this section, what is a board game? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's well established that they don't need to put that now. I think that's more. I can understand the game designer writing it because it's kind of a for the game designer, it's kind of a mission statement or statement of intent, where they outline what their concepts are of how you should do things. But it doesn't need to be put in the book. They might write it out to make their ideas clearer, but I don't think it needs to be put in the book. If anything, it would just be put in the game master advice section or something like that.
Yeah. Which, we can forgive probably up into the mid 1980s role-playing games that we're still putting what is it role-playing game sections in. But nowadays, I mean, we're the parents of the generation that is going to possibly be interested in role-playing games. And I mean, imagine being a parent in the 1970s or 1980s and having to explain to your kids what a talkie was. Okay, you're going to see moving images up on the screen, but there's also going to be sound. Don't be frightened, So unless you're getting paid by the word by your publisher, future GM writers, what is a role-playing game? Not necessary.
I think the modern writers too underestimate the players, because I'm sitting here looking at this player's handbook, and what does it say? Even if you are not familiar with fantasy role-playing games in general and Dungeons and Dragons in particular, you will find this work is a complete game system in itself. It will stand alone and has been written and edited in order to make the whole as easily understood as possible without taking anything away from its complexity and completeness. Blah, blah. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is a world. Considerable enjoyment and excitement in early play stems from not knowing exactly what is going on, so they tell you not to read the Dungeon Master's Guide. Sword and Sorcery best describes what they don't tell you what a role-playing game is.
Yeah.
But and this was 1978. So like 43 years ago, they didn't tell you what a role-playing game is. All right, let's have a look at the other one then.
Awig asks, does it explain dice? I hate that.
Book 1, Characters and Combat, Traveller. It has required materials and equipment. The complete Traveller, they've spelled complete EAT. The complete Traveller must necessarily include more than simply these rule booklets. The following list should suffice to get you started. Traveller books 1, 2, and 3, dice, paper, writing instrument. Optional materials, hex paper, miniature figurines, electronic calculator for bookkeeping purposes, especially when players start handling large sums of money. And then playing the game. They don't say what a role-playing game is. So 1977. So if the ones written in the 1970s didn't have to tell us what a role-playing game was, I don't see why the ones written in the 2020s need to.
Well, I maybe there's a sense of going for broader appeal. I honestly, I'm as bumfuzzled as you are. If there's anyone out there who's got a clue as to why we would need to explain what a role-playing game is, chime in the comments. Put it down in the live chat or the comments or whatever.
Well, I think it can be just because I think in this world, in the coaching world, there can be a tendency for trainers who are newer at training people, or coaches who are newer at training people, to kind of over-explain and assume that the person they're speaking to is an idiot. And then over time, you generally learn, no, most people are a bit smarter than you might expect. They know a bit more anatomy and so on than you might expect, and they understand some things. And the things they don't understand, they will figure out as they go along. If they do they put the bar on their back enough time and squat it enough times, then they'll figure some things out without your having to tell them.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with role playing games. I think my impression when I go back and read these things, when I haven't read them kind of cover to cover for a bit, is always that they just assumed that you were not an idiot, and they assumed that you would figure out things in play.
Well, ours has always been a fairly intellectual hobby. I mean, and like you said, if you've made it this far, if you got to a place where you could buy Traveler or original Dungeons and Dragons or even AD&D, you didn't buy those by mistake. You didn't go to the bookstore looking for a book on woodworking and you accidentally picked up Traveler instead. Or even, I was looking to do the whole, Europe on $5 a day, and I figured Traveler, that would be what I'm after, and it's trigonometry and imaginary spaceships. What even is this? But with that said, I think there's some credence to the old bit from George Carlin, which is, how dumb the average person is? Half of them are dumber than that. So,
I think when most people appear dumb, it's just that they're not really paying attention. They're kind of taking things and people for granted, and they're just thinking of something else than that. So I think when it comes down to training people in the gym or sitting people down around a game table, it's whoever's in charge. It's their job to capture those people's attention and make them pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, and that that goes back to universal DM. See, it all links back together. Good DM, like how you capture people's attention, whether you're running Call of Cthulhu or Traveler or Twilight 2000 or any flavor of Dungeons and Dragons or Conflict or Realm of Yolmi or Cinnabar is it's the same. It's the same. You make a believable, interesting world for your characters to live in, and you be engaging. You engage your players, and how you do that is universal.
It is, and it's there's also a little bit of adjusting to the individual. I was saying this to one of my gym members the other day because I had two newbies start, and they're very different people. One obviously just wanted to get straight in and start doing things, and the other was more interested in all the sort of the details and the science of it and so on. So one got a simpler program, and the other one got a more complex program.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them, it's a newbie program, and they're going to get the same results either way. And that's why I usually default to making it simple. Same with game systems, but the one who was more interested in all the science and the details of it, she needed more of a complex program to give her an intellectual challenge, or she needed it to be technically more challenging than did the person who just wanted to get stronger and so on. And I think similarly with players, so you go around the game table and you've got the players who will be active and engaged, and they're leaning forward and they're really into things, and the others are just kind of sitting back. And sometimes they're the ones who are sitting back because they're shy or they're being talked over by others.
Mm.
And sometimes they're sitting back because they want to sit back. That's just what they do. They're happy to just sit back and then wait for the time to say, I stab it with my sword. It takes some experience with people and also some experience with the particular people that you're working with to be able to suss that out, figure that out, and move on. So I think there's similarities even between all this stuff and what we do at the game table, which I never really expected. when I got into training people, which is obviously long after I started gaming. But yeah, there's some similarities because in the end you're dealing with people, and if you're the game master or the coach, you're taking a kind of a leadership or mentoring role in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, as I said, I think the average person isn't dumb. I think the average person just isn't engaged because most of the time you don't have to be. You could just walk along the street and be thinking about your favorite football team or something like that, and it doesn't matter. But then when the lights turn red and you keep walking, now it suddenly matters. So,
Right.
but most of the time, it doesn't matter if you're not that engaged, so you don't bother. But when it comes to your profession or your hobbies, that's the time that you want them to be engaged. So I think, and that's why the advice which works for fifth edition will also work for original D&D and so on, because in the end, it's about getting the players engaged. It's not really about the charts and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's capturing that engagement. It's holding on to that engagement. It can be the challenge, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. The desired goal, and maintaining that sense of interest. I mean, now I have gotten good and ranty about people who say, "Oh, your Monday game must be terrible because you can't keep people engaged. You can't keep 12 people engaged all the time, every time." To which I say,
Well, they keep showing up, so
"Yeah, exactly. I believe me, I've had people leave my game. I've had people leave my game because of work issues. I had 2 people join, and then they realized, wait, this is 3 hours a week, and we have a wedding to plan, and the holidays are coming up, and so on and etc. So they dipped out. But I've never had anybody say directly to me, "Look, I'd play in an AD&D game, but yours sucks because I can't get engaged." But I know, that. Sorry, just responding to a text message there. There are times when and look, all you folks, when you're learning dungeon mastering and you're going through your early games, and I wanted to, that it is okay. Don't panic. Don't overcorrect. I think like overcorrecting for anything can be like a terrible thing, regardless of what you're doing. I have lost engagement. I have felt engagement of my players beginning to slip. I'll realize, wait a minute, the guy playing the druid hasn't said anything in a half an hour. Is he still there? And the easiest way to fix that, whether you have 3 players or 30 players or somewhere in between, is to is to just shift your focus a little bit. Even if it's just to say, okay, and I'm picking on Paul, the guy that plays the druid on Monday night. Even if it's just to say, okay, what's your druid doing, Paul? Okay, the characters are hacking up monsters and they're stomping.
You don't need to overcorrect and create an entire adventure just for Paul the druid in your next session.
Exactly. Just say what. Okay, what are you doing? If you feel like it's flagging a little bit. I made the analogy a couple of weeks ago of keeping the Chinese dishwashing trick. Where you got all the plates spinning on sticks. You don't have to stop and go to one because you saw it start to wobble and just focus on that one. Just go down there, give it a bump, and then move on.
Yeah.
So it's just as important to not to not drive your game the other way. And I talk about it as overcorrecting. Like if you've ever played an old military flight sim, that's supposed to be super accurate on your PC, and you notice that because they're modeling wind and, drift, and it's picking up on the tiny little micro inputs from your joystick because it's not exactly precisely centered and so on, and you notice that your plane is sort of banking and slightly nose down. You don't grab the stick and shove it hard in the other direction, because then you're going to spin out of control in the new direction. That's overcorrecting. And it's, if you're driving along, no car's front end is perfectly aligned. You're going to have a little tiny bit of drift, and even a brand new right off the factory floor, Mercedes 500 SL, it's going to drift just a little tiny bit, but you're not going to grab the wheel and jerk it as hard as you can to the right if it's drifting slightly left. And same thing in your RPGs at the table. Don't, like Kyle said, I'm not going to slam the brakes on the game and just focus the rest of the session on Paul's druid. Like, yeah, I know you guys are doing stuff, but the druid is, we gotta talk to him. We gotta find out what's going on in the, what the druid is doing. Cause then it's weird.
Yeah.
Everybody's like,
especially as like I was just looking on Wikipedia about herbs for my druid.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave me alone.
He could have been very carefully studying the druid spell table and looking at, where would I find belladonna? Because, I think we're going to need that soon, And it's doubly so because, these days a lot of gaming is online.
Mm.
And the feeling when you're online GMing can be that, okay, 3 out of 12 of the people at my table, or 2 out of the 6, or 1 out of the 4, or whatever, is doing most of the talking and has been for the next little while. Am I losing them? Are they watching YouTube videos or reading a book or texting someone? When you're face to face, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell, when you see the phone come out, and it's not to take pictures of your kick-ass miniatures and Dwarven Forge setup, or because they have a die rolling app or a PDF of the player's handbook on their phone. When the phones come out and they're like, what am I rolling? You're not rolling anything. I'm just asking what you're doing in the tavern. Then, you've kind of got a little bit more. You got a little bit more of an indicator that perhaps
we've all been there, and we've all done that on both sides.
Yes. I was in a huge game at a con once, and I'm sitting there, and I glanced at the time, and I realized, oh crap, over in the dealer area there was that one booth. I think he said he was going to close up after a certain session. That guy had a couple of cool minis I wanted to get. So I said, it was horrible of me, and I felt absolutely terrible, but I said, I need to step away from the table for a second. But I was one of 15 people playing this guy's 2E AD&D game.
Mm-hmm.
So I self-disengaged. I'm so sorry to say that.
The second became an hour. You didn't go back. Yeah.
No, I came back. Okay. I knew the game master, but I also didn't, I didn't come back and say, hey, yeah, look, I wanted to go buy a couple of minis. I just tucked those in my backpack and was like, whoo, just needed a breather there. Just had to, I'm back now. Okay, what are we doing? And that was it. But how
did we waste time and distract ourselves at the game table before mobile phones? I guess it was
dice stacking.
We all had like dice stacking and the novels of R.A. Salvatore.
Yes, for me it was predominantly dice stacking and playing with the miniatures that weren't being used. Before I became a DM, I think if you're dicking around with miniatures and stacking dice, but you're the DM, you you may have a larger problem than player engagement. You may have deeper issues at your gaming table than I
Yeah,
wonder
it's
why.
the same in the gym. I've seen it, like, the gym members, lifters, they'll play around with the phones. But if the coach or the trainer is playing with his
Yeah.
phone,
There is
there's not a strong community there.
there's this famous it was a British comedy show, so it was on for like 2.5 seasons back in the mid late 90s, called Trigger Happy TV, and it was just ridiculous gotcha kind of. I guess people would like TikTok would be. This would have been like a pre TikTok thing, but one of them was they had one of the actors, or actresses I should say. The wind up was that she was a yoga coach, and she'd so she's in the studio. They set the studio up. The people who came into the studio were actually there. I think that it was like a free yoga course thing. She comes in and they roll out their mats, and the calming music is playing, and she's like, so take that, face plant pancake lotus style position, whatever it is, and hold that, feel your muscle, feel the tension, peace and tranquility, cleanse your systems, and just hold that. And she quietly she walks out of the room. She's still talking to him, and she hits play on the boombox, or like starts another tape on the boombox that's still got the new age music going, and it's just her saying encouraging yoga things. And then you can see her through the plate glass windows. She goes out, lights up a cig, opens a bottle of beer, and is like just like leaning against the bumper of her car, like reading a trashy novel. And everybody's in there, doing these like face down and away from the window things. And I think that was like the premise, the wind up, and the joke. They didn't show if these people like, hey, wait a minute, had reactions like that. But that would be the equivalent of the DM, like, okay, guys, you're there, you're in a Sararak's tomb, and you've been exploring for hours. Think about how you're going to find the correct sequence of crystals to touch, and you break out your painting tray and start working on a mini. You just got the Conan soundtrack softly going in the background, and you're just sitting there painting, and the players are kind of like talking amongst themselves, like, well, we could true seeing might reveal, and you're just like, yeah, true seeing. So
yes, so engagement.
Engagement,
And that's the other reason that you do not ask a question. Like, don't ask him. He won't give you the answer you're looking for. No, that's exactly what you want, because the answer you're looking for is not engaging. Being told what you want to hear is not engaging. It just washes over you. You don't absorb it. Being told something you don't want to hear, something that's a little bit jarring, or something that makes you go, no, oh, yeah, maybe that's, hang on, I have to think about that. That's engaging. That's engaging. It's for this reason that I go to places on the internet where people disagree with me. It's just much more engaging and interesting.
Yeah.
I could spend all my time at Knights and Knaves Ale House or something, but it's probably, I wouldn't learn much.
Yeah, we would all agree with what you say over on that forum. I can't bring myself to make an account on RPG.net. I would get at like 2 minutes and make that account. And I promise you, like, if I made like the Dungeon Delver, like that account would just be pre-banned. Hey, click here to send your confirmation email. Click. You have been banned.
Well, the place you go where people disagree with you has to allow you to disagree.
Yeah.
So but they don't do that. So, and anyway, they're not really an RPG site.
Yeah, no, it's a socio-political forum that has people who play role-playing games for socio-political reasons.
Yeah. And the occasional person who asks about a rule set and then gets banned for it.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about Adventurer Conqueror. You're banned.
Damien asks, where does the Conan soundtrack rank in the list of workout music? Overall, pretty good, because you've got to have. It depends on your workout. Like if you're just going for a run or something, it's probably not that great. But if you're doing this barbell stuff here, it's pretty good because you've got a couple of minutes of the energetic stuff and the fight music and so on. And so you can do your lifting then, and then you've got the more calm tracks. So you can that's your rest period between doing your heavy squats and so on. But overall, it's the best soundtrack to the best movie that's ever been made, and I will knife fight anyone who disagrees with me.
Oh yeah, I will be in your corner on that knife fight. I will be the McCoy to your Kirk during Pon Farr on that knife fight. But I won't drug you up. I'll give you adrenaline to.
Paul says he's been summoned. I think it's your role to.
Now that I've been summoned, the half hour of silence. Okay, so it's
logistics of a zip line. What?
All right, so I gotta give this setup for this. A little spoiler. So the players are playing S4, and I'm going to come back to the Conan soundtrack. Actually, I'm going to mention the Conan soundtrack right here. If you really want to get the Conan soundtrack and have it full effect, Kyle, just build the Wheel of Pain in your backyard. Just tell your customers, all right, we're going to do something new today. You're going to come back here, and you're going to push this around. And, just put your hands on the log, let your upper body and your legs work together. Well, all this is really good, Kyle, but why do I have to wear the manacles? Shut up.
I did actually consider that briefly, but it's out on it would have to go out on our driveway out there, and it would block the access to the two places behind us.
Well. So
the neighbors would have to spend some time on the Wheel of Pain just to be able to go to the shops.
I just see your neighbor wakes up one morning, you've built this Bronze Age grist mill training torture method, and they just look at it. Crumb.
I don't think they'd get it. I've got one bunch of there's Koreans, and there's some Australian-born Chinese who are accountants or something like that behind us. I don't think it's in their.
It's not in their wheelhouse.
The Koreans, Koreans understand gaming, all right. They, computer gaming like crazy. They understand gaming, all right, but not so much D&D in that. So,
right.
And the other guys aren't gamers at all. They're just very dual income, no kids kind of people.
So I am justly busted by Paul, and so I have to give Paul his due here. There's a little preview of tomorrow, talking about doing the game wrap up. So. If you're not familiar with S4, Lost Caverns of Sojkant, there's a underground. Actually, there's a couple of underground rivers that, if your party is typically equipped for dungeon adventuring, that is, walking through relatively dry dungeon hallway. I mean, a 5-foot deep pool of water that stretches across the width of a hallway in an AD&D dungeon is a huge surprise to most players, right? They'll spend 45 minutes. Should we probe it with a 10-foot? But I don't. What if it's not water? What if it's an ochre jelly under a thin layer of water, and we stick the pole in and it oozes up and gets a surprise round to attack? Okay, well, what if it's an illusion? What if it's not just a few feet deep? What if it's hundreds of feet? Players will spend the longest time over that. So Lost Caverns of Sojkant has rivers and lakes and so on in the underground. So the party was stymied on how to do this. So they had two things. They had a rope of climbing, and they came out of a cavern on a cliff face that overlooked one of the underground rivers. And they could see in the distance, but still in the length range of the rope of climbing, they could see a distant shore. So they're like, well, clearly what we have to do is make a zip line and zip across the underground river to get to dry ground. So there was a lot of discussion about that. And yes, Paul was engaged. I was concerned. I always want to make sure that everybody's engaged. Damien says, fun fact, the wheel of this is true, by the way. What Damien's, it is so well built, some of the crew had to push against Arnie. The first time Arnie pushed it, it rotated forward and hit him in the back of the head. It was exceptionally well balanced. It was actually on a metal bearing system, so the other actors in the Wheel of Pain, the kid actors, they shouldn't look. You can just walk along. You can just push this with your hands. It's not heavy. You're just gonna do this for a couple minutes, and we're gonna film it. And they probably thought it was fun. And then here comes Arnie, when he's an adult, and he gives this thing a shove, and it flies around and clocks him in the back of the noggin. So they had to do that. They had to have the film crew pushing against.
And Paul says these exercises sound rather aggressive. Wheel of Pain, Riddle of Steel, Tree of Woe.
I can just see Kyle greeting somebody there in ceremonial robes and that. Oh, sorry, Kyle. The train. There was a delay. I guess car on the tracks or something. This is the third time you have been late. Contemplate this on the Tree of Woe. Nods to a couple other students.
The Tree of Woe is for if they quit.
Yeah.
Contemplate this on the Tree of Woe.
Crucify him.
The
what is the weight to the hand that lifts it?
No, I have said it. Steel isn't strong, boy. Flesh is stronger. Because, like, I shit you not, I've quoted that to people in the gym, because past about 220 pounds on the bar, there will be a visible bend in the bar when somebody has it across their shoulders or whatever. There'll be a visible bend in the bar. As they come up and down, it'll kind of whip a little bit. And past about 350, 400 pounds or whatever, when they stand up with it, you'll see a distinct like that. So what you have done then is made your body stronger than steel, because the steel is bending and you are not.
Yep.
So I have actually quoted that in the gym. Steel isn't strong, boy. Flesh is stronger. What is a steel compared to the hand that wields it? So, yeah.
Damien says Arnie racked up a few injuries in that film. He did. Sandal Bergman, actually, one of the stuntmen's swords, because they weren't foam. They weren't rubber. Milius is like, yeah, no, steel. They got to be steel, so they sound right. No, we don't want a Foley. It'll just sound generic. They had steel swords. So Sandal Bergman nearly got her, like, one of her fingers cut off. Poor kid. Or maybe that was the stuntman she was fighting against. But I know that, it was no pun intended, a dicey thing, filming that.
That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be done. Models, yes. Not CGI, because the CGI, the computer-generated imagery dates.
Yes,
it dates very quickly. Anyone who's seen the redone versions of Star Wars and Jedi and stuff will see that. When they go down into Mos Eisley, and it's suddenly so crowded with all these animals going around and stuff. And when you see Han Solo talk to Jabba in one of the things, and he walks over his tail, and he does that sort of, there's that little jerky janky thing that I still get when I'm playing DayZ.
Yeah.
There's that jerky janky thing where he just suddenly moves across as he walks across Jabba's tail. The CGI dates, but the models not so much. You could still look back like good old Jason and the Argonauts, where they're fighting the skeletons. It looks surprisingly good.
Yes,
That
it
was
looks.
like what, 1956 or something?
Yeah, Ray Harryhausen's work, man, and he was doing stuff into the 80s. Clash of the Titans, and Clash of the Titans holds up. When Villeneuve did Blade Runner 2049, he wanted he very much wanted that look, and so they built giant sets. They built model sets. Yeah, and there's too many of these people, but some internet movie critic was bitching about 2049 and it's inferior to the original. Well, of course it's not going to be better than Blade Runner, right? No film is. But he was like, oh, all the CGI, and it was terrible, and it just it was like a video game. It was all glitching. I'm like, did you do any homework on this? Because Villeneuve embraced practical effects on that film. But to go the other way, you're talking about Star Wars. I knew a guy who did effects for many years, and for the longest time, the digital effects industry in Hollywood, it was a very it was a very circuitous club. Like, you might work with 10 people on one film and then go off and do your own thing, and then you're working with 5 of them again on another film, and so on and et cetera. He knew the guy that did the new digital effects for the re-releases of Star Wars. Dude, it was all done on a MacBook. It's literally, it was, he said it was just one guy and a MacBook. So yeah, you go, like, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with movie magazines that talked about Star Wars. When I would see those piles and piles and piles of X-Wing models just sitting there waiting for the brush, or done and waiting for explosive squibs to blow them up, a half a room-sized model kit of the Millennium Falcon, things like that. That just made me drool, and it made me want to do that. Now, I never got into that, but I think with my love of terrain and miniatures at the game table, but CGI.
Well, when it's done well, it can hold up. Like, I think I think what's her name, Furiosa's her prosthetic arm. So they did a prosthetic arm. So they had the physical one for some scenes, and then for other scenes they just had her wearing a green glove, and they CGI'd it on top, and that worked pretty well when she was moving quickly. And that moved pretty well. But when you had a closer look, they had the physical one. So I think there's still some pretty damn good work being done, but some will take the CGI as a kind of a shortcut.
Yeah.
So, but if you can have the physical miniatures, but it can be quite a bit of work. I mean, that's why I don't have miniatures in the games that I run. If someone brought a stack along, and that's happened a couple of times with players, and they bring a stack along, and that's fantastic. But I just don't have the time and the skills to do all that painting and so on.
Sure.
So I will be using just a rough piece of paper 9 times out of 10, but sometimes I'll be using a screen to show things moving around and show maps and all the rest. But I've no doubt it's the inferior option. It's just what we have. But if I was doing it for a profession and we're getting paid $100 million to do it, yeah. I'd paint the miniatures or pay someone else to.
Exactly. There's a I have this book. It's probably one of a hojillion of them, but it's like the movie magic of the Lord of the Rings, and there's a one of the people at Weta wrote a very tongue-in-cheek like Murphy's laws of miniature building, and looking at it, I was like, holy crap, all the rumors about the Weta workshop being primarily tabletop gamers is true. Particularly miniature gamers, because like everything there, they were talking about movie props and movie miniatures, and it's absolutely true of tables. It's like one of them is, go ahead and glue that down, it'll never need to move. And another one was, don't bother painting that. It won't, no one will even see it. And just the, on and on. And I'm like, yep, tabletop, yep. All of that from tabletop miniatures. So, but yeah, it's, I think one of the best advents, that came along for tabletop gaming in the last 20 years, probably. And it was WizKids who started this back in 99, I think, with Mage Knight, was pre-painted plastic gaming minis. Just the ability for, and at first I was like, no, they're ugly and it doesn't matter. And I've talked for a long time about, it doesn't matter what individual monster minis look like. Nobody cares what Cobalt 33 looks like compared to Cobalt 32 or 34. Nobody's going to reach up and say, ooh, you should put this mini up on Cool Mini or not, or enter it in Crystal Brush. It's a Cobalt. It's going to be dead in 2 rounds. So slot paint them, bulk paint them, army paint them, slot paint them, whatever you want to call it. But even if you don't want to do that, shit, just go on eBay and buy somebody's, buy somebody's D&D minis collection they're selling off. Spend $50, get 100 minis, and you're good to go. You don't have to fart around with painting them. Save that for character minis or your chief bad guy mini. That's what I say.
Fair enough.
Damien says the cave troll CGI from Fellowship. Gonna have to respectfully disagree with you on that. Well, so maybe the cave troll is okay, but there's a lot of shots of Legolas around the cave troll that I'm just like, did you guys just CGI a PlayStation 2 game? Just like green screen in a PlayStation 2 game, because that's awful. But
well, I mean, I remember reading an article years ago saying that the nature of CGI is that you only notice it when it's bad. If it's good, you don't notice it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's very true.
I think it's probably it's pretty easy to make it bad, though.
It is. Like, and again, to go back to just war stories from my friend Greg, talking about doing effects stuff, like, when you were over time and under budget on shots and stuff got released in shows and movies, everybody in that industry would rag on you. Like, holy crap, that was awful. You actually put your name on the credits on that? That's terrible. But, minis and visual treats can be a lot of fun, but you don't fall into the trap. And this is one thing, I've said this before and I'll say it again. And I was telling people when I was live streaming, the game on on Tuesdays, don't fall into the trap of thinking you need minis and terrain. You don't. Snacks, setting, was it people, snacks, setting, system?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what you need. That's what you need.
Yeah. It doesn't, see, in the player's handbook, it doesn't say you need miniatures. It just says one of the most important items you must have to play the game is a character record. You need a character sheet. So, yeah, okay. But yeah, it doesn't mention needing miniatures, and the DM's guide sort of mentions that it may, etc. be good to have them.
Yep. I think they're neat eye candy. That's pretty much what I've said about that. So, well, folks, I think we've come to the part of the evening, unless Kyle has any further business, any laws to lay down, or we're probably going to wrap up this red carpet and get on out of here. Any parting thoughts this week, Kyle? Any wisdom you'd like to hand down? Anything you'd like to discuss next week that we didn't cover this week?
Um, I don't know. We need a guest who tells us about how to start a game store, because we've got
We
as I've
do.
been saying, or a game club, because as I've been saying, I used to go and do the open game tables
Mm.
um, at places, and can't now because those places have closed because of numerous confinement periods imposed upon us by our lawful evil government. So yeah, so there's no places like that to go there, or very many fewer anyway. Um, so I can tell you all about starting a game group and getting people together, and you can too, and keeping them along. But starting a game store or a game club, if anyone has wisdom on how to make that happen and make that work, hey, they'd be a good guest on the show.
I will open the door then. Come and talk to Kyle and I if you've run a game store or a game club or you've created one, or if you're in the process of creating one, or in the process of planning to create
Oh,
one.
I know who we might be able to ask actually.
Who should we
My,
ask?
well, my old gaming friend John, because whenever he had periods of unemployment, he got dragged into working for a local game store called Mind Games. So he'd have insights on that. His insight was probably don't do it. But
How do you make $100,000 a year with a game store? Invest $200,000 a year.
yeah, something like that. So yeah,
All right.
I'll reach out to him and ask him. He might have insights.
Do reach out to him, and if he wants to sit here and talk to a couple of nerds for an hour in the middle of the morning for him and the evening for me. I do want to make an announcement before we go, guys. It's difficult at best. So the reason I'm a talking icon and not my usual smiling face is not a technical issue from a standpoint of my camera's not working or Discord or OBS is screwing up or something like that. The methodology we have of streaming for Kyle, because Discord, I don't know if it's Discord servers are problematic for connecting up with Australia. I don't know. But we're using, as you can see from the little icon in the corner, StreamYards. And the reason we have that icon in the corner for StreamYard is I got to use the free version. The free version doesn't allow us to split the broadcast to Facebook and to YouTube. I know we have a lot of people who come later and watch on Facebook, or they hop on and watch on Facebook. But to make this so that you can see me and that I can share my screen and that I can do visual stuff, like, I don't even know how this would work if we had a third guest or if we had a third person on, or if it would completely break down me trying to kind of go around it like this. It may be that Wastrel Wednesdays just go to a YouTube format and I'm multicasting every other day of the week. So I love my friends on Facebook, my actual real friends on Facebook and audience both. I appreciate you guys being there, but to make things work for it just may be that Wastrel Wednesdays you'll have to watch on YouTube or watch later on YouTube, but I will still share the link.
That means that they can watch later at their leisure and fast forward through the boring bits.
Exactly. So that's what's going on there. But look, I want to thank everybody. Paul, thank you for your grace and aplomb coming back in to defend yourself. I was not picking on you in a negative way. I just always want to make sure that my players are engaged. And no, I'm not going to send the druid off on his own. Okay, guys, shut up. It's Paul's druid quest from here.
Paul's adventure.
The Lost Caverns of Paul's Conth is what this is now. Damien, thanks for the very cool trivia about the Wheel of Pain and other Conan stuff. Awig, everybody who stepped in and said hi this evening. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you guys.
You're our audience, and you make this cool and you make this fun to do. And so Kyle and I both appreciate it. So I'll be back tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern, and I will give you guys the summary, the wrap up of the Monday night game, and we'll talk some more about some more D&D stuff. So until then, and again, I am Bill Sylvie. This is Kyle Schuant, and this has been Wastrel Wednesday. Y'all have an absolutely stellar afternoon, and we will talk to you later. I I want to answer a week's question in party. Can I not add Facebook as a destination on StreamYard? Yes, but I can't have two destinations on StreamYard. That's the problem. That's the key, is I cannot have two destinations. So maybe one day I'll get a donation and I'll be able to do it. I'm not rattling the tin cup. I'm just saying maybe that'll happen. Maybe I'll treat myself in the holiday. I don't know. You guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.
Ciao.